Right. Hey guys, I am Kristen Howerton. I blog at Rage Against the Minivan, and I'm here with Leslie Dixon, sex educator with Birds and Bees Connection, and we've been doing this conversation about how to talk to your kids about sex, sexuality, and puberty, all that kind of stuff. We have covered developmental stages, and today we want to talk about tweens.
So remember, last week we started with the little kids, and so we're sort of moving up the ladder, and this week it is tweens. And what I always tell parents is, if you didn't get the little ones, it's never too late. So this is probably one of the most important ages, because one of the things that we're finding is it's called the new puberty, is that young girls and boys are entering puberty at a younger age.
I've heard that. Why is that?
Well, there's a really good book about that. It's called The New Puberty.
Oh.
And what these two authors refer to is three pieces. One, obesity. Two, the environment, which I think we all pretty much realize. And third, and this is the one that concerns me, is stress. Because stress, when it enters your body, can kick in hormones at an earlier age. Obviously, the chemicals can do the same thing, and obesity. They all seem to do it, and whether it be all three or one, we're starting to see it at a younger age. Now, here's really the piece. It's not periods. It's puberty. So it's those very first pieces that we associate, which some people don't even realize. Emotional changes, feet getting bigger. So that's why this conversation is so important. And I often ask parents, what did you get when you were, your children's ages? And most of them didn't get much of anything. Right? So how can we expect parents to know what actually puberty is and how to even have a conversation about it? But it's so important because, can you imagine back when you were a child and things started to happen and you didn't know what was happening? And it was, I love the words, awkward, frightening, frustrated, fearful, all these kinds of, conversations about what's happening to my body.
And it's important for kids to be informed about what's happening to their body.
Yes.
Because otherwise all of these changes, which are perfectly normal, are going to be really scary.
Right.
And they might even be shameful because no one has talked to them or prepared them for these changes.
And you've used that word before, and I think it's an important word. I think that feeling of shame about our body, shame about the changes, shame that we're even not doing it like our peer group are really heavy pieces to all of that. So I think this conversation, especially to begin this conversation at this point, is really important. So what does that look like? Okay. So how did you start it?
Well, we have been pretty open with our kids from the get-go. We have books that we read for the girls. The American Girl Doll book is really great. We have some other books about puberty. But we also took your class. We took, the girls took a class with Birds and Bees Connection, which was super helpful. And then the boys took a different class. And then we're actually, on Saturday, doing a class here at my house for my daughter and some of her friends. So we have kind of gone at it from all angles because I really feel like the more information, the better. The better they're equipped. I can remember being that age around puberty, and I remember at slumber parties it was the #1 topic of conversation. Have you gotten your period yet? Are you wearing a bra yet? Who has boobs? Who doesn't have boobs? Who has pubic hair? Who doesn't have pubic hair? And I think we talked about it that much because no one else was talking to us.
Correct.
That's all we had,
Correct.
Our peers.
Right. And that's usually where it comes from. It's your peers. And if you ask, parents where they got it from, most of them were their peers. The challenge now is, where do the peers get it from? And one of the answers is social media, the internet. And that's one of my biggest concerns. because one of the statistics is average age for boys to access pornography is around 11 years of age. And that is concerning because once they see things, they can never unsee those things. So what do they need at this age? And I think that's one of the most important things to really look at. Well, I think, again, for you, that those books to become informed. And obviously we have classes. And if you're here in the Orange County, Los Angeles neighborhood, definitely look into our classes. If not, we have digital classes that you can always go online and get the classes that way as well. We've got you covered, absolutely. And there's great books, whether it be the American Girl book or I'm Perfectly Normal. There are wonderful books out there for that particular stage and age. So what do they need? Well, I think they need the basics. Again, if you haven't had the body part conversation, you need to have the body part conversation. What is going to change? Obviously, the most, is the basics, emotional changes. Well, look at your young person now. Are you noticing some shifts and changes in their emotions and how they're dealing with things? Are they more frustrated?
Oh, we're not talking about me. Yes, I'm noticing that. I have a lot of tweens.
You have a lot of, you do.
A lot of ones.
You've got hormones just all over the place. And that's another piece is, what's a hormone? What's puberty? I mean, I think that just that basic conversation of you're about to go through puberty. Most of them have heard that term. The other question I always ask is, okay, you've heard it. Now, how many are excited about going through puberty? They're not too excited.
No.
They're really, because they're afraid of all the things they've heard, the myths and the taboos. And so they're not very excited. The boys are excited about getting taller. But other than that, not so much. So again, helping them to feel comfortable about what puberty is. Well, it's physical and emotional changes that we all go through. And it's all preparing us to be an adult. So here's something I always try to do is when I'm having those conversations is sort of let it stand a question. So what do you think puberty is? And it's physical and emotional changes to prepare you for being a what? And what you find is they do know some of the answers and you're including them in the conversation. And I think that's really important at this stage because I think critical thinking about this topic and this sort of respect of their body is really, really important.
I agree.
So puberty, what is it? Physical, emotional changes. What causes it? Hormones. Oftentimes I'll say the two female hormones out loud and I have everybody say it out loud, with some oomph, and have some, that's the other thing, humor. Humor is so, we take this so seriously. We need to have some fun with this.
I agree.
If there's funny things that are going to happen to your body, and the more we, relax and have some fun with it and don't take it so seriously, it's going to help them through this stage and age as well. So puberty, what is it? Hormones. And, for girls, it's estrogen and progesterone. And for boys, it's testosterone. And again, that humor with it. And we talk about genes. And genes can be biological genes. They can be your life parent, things that you get from your life parents. And I think that's important because we've talked about this before. There's all different situations that parents are dealing with. And I think there's ways to help them understand what puberty is and genes are, and make them feel as comfortable as possible wherever they are, genetically, in their home. I think that's important. That's part of it as well.
Yeah. I know one of the big concerns that I witness in tween girls, well, I think for both girls and boys, a lot of the concern around puberty is around embarrassing things.
Yes.
And so for girls, it seems to revolve around getting my period, and what if I get it at school, and what am I going to do, and what if I had to ask someone for a tampon, I would die. And then from the boys, it's, you know, it's getting
Erections.
You don't want one, and, you know, all of the things around that. So how do we as parents kind of reduce the anxiety around these, you know,
absolutely
potentially embarrassing puberty situations?
Right. I think the more you're willing to talk about it and get it out there and sort of, again, demystify it, that, you know, as a mother, I think every mother has had some kind of embarrassing situation, whether it be at school, at Disneyland, on a trip, and sort of normalize it.
I agree. That has been super helpful for us too, and I've let my daughters be witness to some conversations my friends and I have even had around periods, just to know, like, we all have them, we all get it. It's not that big of a deal. We can all talk about it, because I didn't have that experience growing up. So I sort of felt like me getting a period in a public place was like this new thing that had only happened ever to me.
Right.
So normalizing, I think, is big.
I think it's the most important thing, because I think the beauty of our class is that there is these mothers and daughters and fathers and sons, and the children start to understand everybody's going through it. They're going through it at different times, but we all go through it. So there's that normalization. And I think the more you talk about it, the more you normalize it, the more you bring out, you know, sanitary pads, tampons, and have conversations about it, and that comfort they get with that, and their body, that this is going to happen, and to prepare them. Now, in our classes, we create cute little charming purses for the girls, so they're prepared as far as sanitary pads and other products they need in their, you know, backpacks. It's like a Girl Scout being prepared, which I think is really important. And I think the more you know, engage them and help them to be part of the process, and they're going to feel more comfortable. Boys, this is an important one, because I think oftentimes dads they don't know exactly what to say. Obviously they went through it. Oftentimes the mothers have to have this conversation, and to be truthful, I'm the one oftentimes teaching the classes. But I think we do need to help. We need to use that terminology and understand why they're having an erection. I mean, two things, an erection or a wet dream. Can you imagine for a boy waking up and having sticky pajamas and not understanding what was happening to his body? It is. And to go to school and something happens and he has an erection and he doesn't have any control over it. So the more information about these things that we take for granted or we're uncomfortable talking about, get comfortable. I think that's the most important thing. Find ways to be comfortable. It's the whole continuum of topics. So it is the obvious ones. It's periods. It's breasts or boobs for girls. And I have this whole conversation about the word boob, because boob in reality means dull or stupid person, and breasts are pretty darn cool. And so these wonderful conversations with humor are going to help them. Even, you know, whether it be the girls or the boys, their feet are going to get bigger. Well, they're going to get bigger because if they don't, they're going to fall down. You know, emotional changes. So how do we deal with emotional changes? You know, there's so many topics you can have so much fun with, that this isn't all about sex. So we're all leading up to that. We're all leading up to what are the physical changes, what are the emotional changes, how to cope with all these things. And also then for girls, obviously, talking about periods.
One of the things that we've kind of made a pact with our kids too is if they ever hear a word, doesn't matter how naughty, they can come to us and ask any word. They're not going to get in trouble. We're not going to say, where did you hear that? And we will define the word honestly. And I feel like that's been really important for us too, because I feel like they hear so much from their peers. They see so much on social media, and I would rather them learn from me than Google something, you know, or go looking for that information elsewhere.
I think what you're doing is the most important thing. You're make that normalcy, and also opening up where your children always feel like they can come to you. You've been having this conversation. You've made it normal. You've made it comfortable. It's just part of the conversation. It isn't anything taboo. And I think the more we look at it that way, the less comfortable our children are going to be coming to us. And that's really the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
Because in reality, if we aren't willing to be brave enough to start the conversation, and start it slow, simple. You know, your feet are getting bigger. Do you notice any changes?
Totally.
You know, I'm noticing you're smelling a little bit more. I mean, there's all kinds of things. But if you don't, if we're not willing to have those conversations, and maybe a parent needs to look at why we're so discomforted about it, then they're not going to come to you. And of all the things for me as a sexual health educator, that's the most important thing. I want to make sure that connection between parent and child, their comfort in their body, is established. So guess what? Once they hit 6th grade, middle school, high school, they're going to have all kinds of questions, concerns. And who best to come to but a parent? If the parent isn't comfortable, find some, a family member or someone who can lead the way into this most transitional time in their life. And so they have a place to ask questions. Can you imagine if a boy accesses pornography and he doesn't know who to go to when he sees these things? Or a girl gets her period. I'll be perfectly honest. I was a Girl Scout on Catalina Island. I was 10 years old, and that's when I got my period. I didn't know who to talk to or what to do. And I don't want any girl, boy to have that same kind of experience, because it's perfectly normal. It really is. We take away the normalcy from it. We have the discomfort about it. And I think there is enough information out there that parents can find that comfort about it, and start simple. It doesn't have to be overwhelming.
I agree. Well, I'm going to share 2 of my biggest tips for tweens in puberty. Number 1 is deodorant. And specifically, natural deodorant. I know I've been on a soapbox about this a lot, and it's funny because we're on the same page.
I'm the same way.
But when we talk about the chemicals that have been, being researched and studied as perhaps causing early onset puberty, aluminum is one of them. It is the active ingredient in pretty much every deodorant, unless it's natural. I will link up to some natural deodorants in the comments, but my kids smell real bad without deodorant, but I have found some great products that work. The other thing that I think is an absolute necessity, I'm going to go grab it. If you have teens or tweens,
I totally agree with you. I mean, that's a big one for me. For the most part, I stay neutral, but when it comes to chemicals, going into our young people's lives, it's a big concern for me.
The second one is an internet filter. If you have tweens or teens, you have to have an internet filter. It is not okay to just have a talk with your kids about not looking at pornography. If you think that you want your kid to have a healthy sexuality as an adult, the best thing you can do is protect them from learning about sex and having their first exposure to sex be people on the internet that they don't know. Pornography is a very quick dark hole. And there's a great book on it, on the effects of pornography, actually on girls, called Girls and Sex by Peggy Ornstein.
But
great we're really learning that, the earlier kids are exposed to pornography, the more difficult they will have in intimacy in adulthood. That in fact it has a very difficult collateral damage on sexuality, on the way that they view themselves, their bodies, their sexuality, and then the opposite sex or the same sex. It's just very damaging. So I just feel like if you have a tween or teen, you've got to have something. You can't just have the Wild West available on the phone or the computer and think that a talk is going to keep them from stumbling onto things.
Right. So there's two great websites. One for the products, which is EWG, and the other one for social media and a lot of these things is called Common Sense Media.
Yeah.
Those are really two good ones. The other piece about the social media and electronic devices is get them out of their rooms. You know,
I could not agree more.
Get them out. They should not be there. They should be someplace where parents are monitoring.
And in fact, I'm going to flip the camera right now, and I'm going to show you guys what I do. So, let's see here. Okay. That cabinet right there is not a pantry. That is our technology closet. So all of the kids plug their phones in there at night, their computers and iPads in there at night. So nothing's in the room. And then at night, at will, I can go and make sure that everything in the history files are appropriate.
Right.
But someone asked where you can buy this. This is the Disney Circle. This is one that I really like. You can buy this on Amazon, and I'll put a link in the comments. This covers everything in the home, and you can hook it up to an app on your phone. You can turn the internet completely off. You can look at everything they've looked at. You can filter out websites, apps, everything. And then if you have kids that have cell phones on a data plan, you need to go an extra step. We're not there yet. We only have cell phones on Wi-Fi, so this covers it. If they have data, Disney Circle has a Go feature so that it follows their phones wherever they go, so that if they're, you know, rather than being on Wi-Fi, they are on someone else's Wi-Fi, or if they are, I'll link it up, or if they are on the phone data, it's offering the same level of coverage, so they can't just like go down the street and hook on someone else's Wi-Fi. Or get off the Wi-Fi and use data and then look at things you don't want them to look at.
It's so interesting, you know, when I started teaching this whole topic, it was all about preparing for puberty, the basics. And now, due to social media, the internet, these electronic devices that were created for adults, they were not created for children.
Yeah.
It has now expanded in so many different areas. So when we talk about the basics, talking about puberty, this is why that next topic, and I think this is where we need to hit, is you need to have the sex talk.
Yep.
You need to have that talk because they're going to hear things, see things, and even though their brains aren't ready for all this information, parents need to start having these conversations.
For sure.
Because they're getting it outside of their world. And it's really important. Again, where do you want your children to get educated about their bodies, about sex, about social media, about any of these topics? We want it to come from you.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why we're having this conversation, because we really want to help you.
For sure.
Because I know it's challenging. I've been teaching this long enough, and I know that parents are, you know, really want to do it. 90% want to do it before really get down there and do it.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate Kristen doing this. We're here to support you. And go on our website. We have digital classes, and you know that's what we're here for.
All right. Well, thanks, Leslie. Join us next week. We will be talking about teens.
Yeah.
And then I think we might have to do a whole segment just on social media, technology, internet.
Absolutely.
It's such a big, big topic.
It really coincides with this whole topic of, you know, puberty and the challenges of going through it.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, guys.